Hi, Andrea. Welcome. This is the Kalicube Summit 2026, and we're going to be talking about the delegation boundary, how much decision-making we delegate to the machines. And
Yeah.
Google, when I was speaking for them at Google Marketing Live, asked me to make a particular point about that idea of delegating decisions. So you were the one who kicked off this conversation in my mind with delegating to agents, which is quite extreme. It's giving all of the decision-making to the agent. But there are multiple layers here. Can you go through how you perceive that delegation of decision to the machine?
Yeah. I think at very high level, AI is a problem with trust. Because in order for us to move from the human-centered web to the agentic web, we need to solve a few issues along the line of, building something that it is trustworthy enough. And I think that's kind of the high level picture. And then of course there are some technical implications. Some are quite obvious and well known. And if you want, not far from the existing protocols. For example, HTTP method signature, this RFC 9421, has existed for God knows how long. I mean, maybe since the very early days of the HTTP. And then what is this RFC saying is that when I make a request, I can sign it. I can put a signature and say, this is Andy, and it's knocking at the door of Jason. Now, why this is interesting is because OpenAI just started to promote the support for HTTP signature on its crawler, and these allow us immediately to think more carefully about how important is the delegation, even at the discovery level, because even at discovery level right now, it's becoming not so easy to get information from web pages, because of course we have this tremendous amount of bots. I was looking the other day at a very large financial institution in the US and their traffic. And I found out with some surprise that their organic traffic share got down to 11% of their traffic mix.
Wow.
And I say, well, wow, that's brutal, right? However, when I started to look at the numbers, the organic traffic grew by 12% over the course of last year. So what has happened? What has happened is that the direct traffic, most probably coming from AI bots, has exploded to the point where their healthy mix with 70% plus organic traffic shrank to 11% organic traffic and a enormous amount of bot traffic. And of course, there are in society, whether humans or machines, there are good bots, good entities, and bad entities. And so, of course, we're starting to gate traffic, and we can apply different techniques, whether we want to work with the CDN providers or we want to work at the application layer. But we can start to say, no, you can't access here. You're training, and I don't want you to use my content for training, for example. And so signature, so this kind of old and forgotten protocol, it's kind of being revitalized because ChatGPT is saying, "Hey, I am signing the request coming from ChatGPT." This is interesting because it's also addressing another big problem that we have in this, huge debate about AI visibility that we need to unpack. And the big problem is that we see an increase of what people call ghost citation. So I get traffic, but I'm not getting any credit back.
Yeah.
And it's happening because, of course, models are reasoning recursively in order to obtain multiple evidence points before providing back the response. And so using this protocol and by tracing the signature, we can now see, when the model is accessing us, even if it's doing it only in its thinking trace, even if we're not mentioning the response, if we're used, we can now track because OpenAI is adding a signature to the request. And so that's kind of an evolving scenario, and it opens these opportunities for creating mandates and say, okay, well, that's can be trusted.
Right. And where is that data? Is it on your server? Is it in analytics?
So this data right now is in the HTTP request. So it is in the bulk of logs that we haven't focused enough over the course of the 2 decades of Google, and now they are becoming extremely relevant because they provide us with some understanding of how AI crawlers are behaving.
Okay, brilliant. And you mentioned mandate, and you were the person who talked to me about that first. So the principle is I give a mandate to the agent and it can act on my behalf. Now, generally speaking, when I'm just using an assistant or an agent on my desktop, I'm just asking it to do something and that mandate is implicit. But if it's going to be buying for me, I have to give it a mandate that sets the limits of what it's allowed to do. Is that approximately it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it applies also to more trivial tasks. If you're filling up a form, who is giving certainty on the publishing front that you are the person that is whose data is represented in the form, and so a mandate like the one that is included into the agent to payment protocol that the Google introduced solves exactly this problem. So there is a verifiable digital credential that creates this card mandate, which is a tamper-proof of the user intent. So it's a certificate that you, Jason, have given a mandate to Gemini to, in that case, make a purchase on your behalf. But as you can imagine, this applies to transactions, but it also applies to relevant information sharing practices. Even filling up a form for a governmental website would require some level of mandate in order to be trusted by the publisher. Because as a merchant or as a publisher on the other side of the line, I want to understand who are you and who are you representing. And so this is kind of encapsulated into the at the moment into the agent AP2 protocol that Google introduced, and specifically a card mandate literally certifies that the bot is working on your behalf.
Right. Okay, and so in terms of agential purchases and agential actions within the search environment, how far down that line are we, and how much of it is just hype?
So we are to the point where I only need to give to your Claude bot my llms.txt file, and I can get money from you. So I think that we struggle to understand what AI is capable of, because in a way, the user experience is still very much locked into the stacks. So we've been going through these in the past. We used to have the PC area where it was either Windows or Mac OS, and then all of a sudden we discovered that there was open source, and then we had the Linux revolution, and then multiple operating systems started, and we started to see that in order to keep the user into the walled garden, the tech companies have created stacks. Now the same is happening with AI. So if you are inside ChatGPT, you are exposed to AI through their lenses, but the reality, as it was for the revolution of the internet, is that there are no boundaries, or very few boundaries, when you get out of the stacks. So when we are looking at the stack, like if I am on Google now, I can make a purchase with an agent, but I need to be in the US, for example. I mean, the service hasn't been enabled in other countries yet. But it was already, I think, almost a year ago when I saw that one of our clients from the beauty industry was in one of these Google demos of the agentic commerce, and it was working end to end. And to be honest, in the US, we've done a lot of experiments in the past of enabling, for example, the Google Assistant to let you jump on the buy page of a website without going through the website. So it's nothing really new in a way. But again, the stack have certain limitation. For example, in the context of OpenAI, there's been strong uptake in the beginning, and then they realized that actually inventory data, it's complicated to harness and to harvest and to clean. And so they kind of make a couple of step backs in terms of, yes, you can buy. And right now, I think they are mostly focused on solving the discovery or the assisted phase, as you mentioned it, meaning helping the user understand what is the product that you want to buy rather than actually buying. However, again, if we get out of the stack and I inject my llms.txt file into your Claude bot, I can make him buy,
So
whatever.
it's that open. If I let you...
It is. I mean, a language model will execute instructions. And if these instructions are clear enough and endpoints are available and they are documented, the agent can buy. There's no problem in buying. I mean, it's a solved problem. It's been a solved problem for several months now. But of course, within the stacks, there are some limitation. I would say that right now we are still in the assistive phase where most of the work is helping the consumer understand your products the best rather than actually purchasing.
Right, brilliant. Which brings us beautifully back to the part I was going to ask about, which is in the assistive state, what are the decisions that are being made by the engine that humans have now passed over to the machine that we were taking in search before?
So, first of all, I believe that we're now seeing a diversified scenario on the retrieval layer. And whether in the beginning, I think the traditional SEO playbook was consistent across the different players. As we're evolving and tooling is getting more sophisticated across the board, and of course we have more models and more use cases, there is clearly a difference between anything that is built on top of Google or Microsoft that leverage pluriannual work on the web index versus anything else. So the RAG, your agent RAG, your retrieval augmented generation agent built, vibe coded last night, it's behaving, in a very different way than how Gemini is behaving or how Copilot is behaving. Perplexity and Claude and ChatGPT have a complete different retrieval pipeline. Now, ChatGPT has been, using Bing for quite some time, and is still using it for, a good amount of queries. However, they do have their own infrastructure that is starting to, get more into action as we progress. Now, that means that it is no longer the same story. It is for Google and Bing, so there is a common part, and then there is a split when it gets to the kind of geo component, if you like. And so let's focus on this other side. Let's focus on what are the differences, because a few months ago we've done we published a research paper, and we've done a control experiment to demonstrate exactly this point. A pipeline that leverage structured data like Google does or like Bing does, it's essentially different from a pipeline that doesn't leverage structured data within the crawling, indexing, and retrieval phase. And so what's happening there is that, of course, it is more tied to semantic similarity and to the ability to retrieve evidence. So the key part of an agent is that he knows that he tends to hallucinate. He knows that the model is frozen, and so he doesn't have up-to-date information. And because he's aware of that, and because he's aware that RAG is also, not working as it should, now it is working recursively in an agent loop to find evidence. This is why we see more ghost citation. We see more traffic coming in and less citation going out, because the agent in a lot of queries is just sifting through the information to understand the evidence that is required to compose the final response. We were looking at Bing geo pipeline, so everything after the SEO common route. There, they have a council of models that are evaluating the potential response before you get an answer. So there is a council of models that are, dissecting the potential evidence to back up a response. We know this also from the research paper in Google since the time of the feature snippet. Google looks first for the evidence first summarize the answer, provides the answer, and then tries to fetch the evidence for backing up the answer, as if the answer is just a net that gets thrown out in order to see what is true out of these expected answer.
Which kind of makes me think of a couple of things. Number one is the corroboration that I've been talking about for years is phenomenally important, significantly more so even than when I was talking about entity homes and anchoring your entity and getting yourself in the knowledge graph, is that corroboration is now the food that these engines need in order to be able to act.
It is, but it has also changed in a significant way from these old days. Because back in the days...
You're saying I'm out of date?
No, that there is an important twist of the story.
Brilliant.
That we've been telling over the course of the past years. A lot of the way in which we analyze the information crystallized inside a knowledge graph, whether this was Satori on Microsoft's side or Google Knowledge Graph or the different manifestation of Google knowledge graphs. Corroboration was designed to prove facts, and now the game has changed in the sense that looking for evidence, it also means looking for contradictory point of views. This model council idea that I think was introduced by Andrea Volpini a few months ago, and now it's been brought into production even in Microsoft indexing and geo pipeline, is not looking for facts that corresponds, but is also looking for facts that contradicts, the statement. Is also looking for evidence that is, coming on exactly the opposite angle. And that's what's changing. So before, we were trying to look, where is the threshold where we can consider this triple to be true, and what we can crystallize it into a knowledge vault or a knowledge graph. Right now, because most of this work is happening also in real time, the point is understanding, okay, this is maybe true for Jason, but it might be false for Andrea. And let me understand more the different perspective, because when I come out, because I'm going to take into account their context, I want to come out, in the right, proper way. So there is an ontological point here. things are no longer true for everyone, because hyper-personalization is making things very, very more sophisticated than they used to be.
Right. So I think it's a brilliant point, because most of us think, well, personalization is it knows I like red shirts, for example. But it's
Sure.
actually my belief system is now coming into that personalization exercise, at which point the personalization is more granular than I think most people realize.
Yeah, no, it got to the extreme that if I send you now an email to Gmail, you don't open that email, but Google Personal Intelligence will read that email and will take it into account when it triggers the AI overview. That's the extreme where we are now. It's live. So if I send you an email that wearing a red shirt makes your leave longer, you might end up in getting that suggestion from the Google AI overview, even if it's totally false, simply because it matches your belief system, and no one is going to care. Because imagine that right now we are able to look at Google AI overview and say, well, it's not really true that you can make pizza with stones, or I don't remember what was the one of these critical errors that came out of Google AI overview. But I mean, we are evaluating now the responses because they're still pretty much the same across the board. But when this is going to become your response, would you be able to come out and say, Google has a problem, is saying that, I can live longer with red shirt? You're not going to do that, because you're going to be afraid also that people will think that, it's your obsession with red shirt that made the machine go crazy. It's not the machine, And so there's going to be also, I think, another critical point that we're not going to be able to evaluate these responses as we're doing now collectively, because it's going to be hyper-personalized. And so we're going to feel also, exposed.
Yeah, I mean, that's an incredibly interesting point. And what I've been looking at now, and I'm on my series of articles on Search Engine Land, talking about the move from micro to macro, is I come from an economics background. SEO, you could measure micro. And in the modern world, because it's so opaque, you need to take a macro approach, which is define your methodology, stick to it, and measure it over time.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally, I think, aligned with what I also think. I also believe that because of the erratic nature of the models and the system, the harnessing around the models, it's even more critical, because again, search was personalized already, but not to the extent of me influencing your AI overview with an unread email sent to your mailbox, or a photo that you have taken like 3 weeks ago on a street in Wisconsin or somewhere else. I mean, the point of personalization right now, it's totally unprecedented. And so I believe that as marketers, we do have we do have different ways of approaching metrics and attribution, and attribution has been broken for quite some times already. I mean, it's not a problem of AI. I mean, but right now we need to define a different process. So what I'm typically doing is looking at the bottom line. So kind of trying to stick to the core, like, am I moving the business? Yes, no. And then the other aspect is that I'm starting to analyze more and more the evidence before you get the answer. So,
Okay.
I mean, you've done this also extensively in the past. Like, what are the evidence behind a knowledge graph panel? You have been teaching this for years. Now, I think it's way more relevant to look at the evidence before the manifestation within an AI response, because that's what we can account for, right? Because that's visible, and it's in front of the eyes of everyone. If there is a YouTube video that says that wearing red shirts makes you live longer, right? So we can look at whatever is outside that AI might fetch. And this is what I call the signal graph. So it's a knowledge graph that is outside of your website, that is made of pieces of information scattered across the social network, the Reddit, the Wikidata, the Wikipedia. So that's kind of how I see the problem of AI visibility right now.
Right. I mean, I love the idea of the evidence layer, and you talk about the signal graph. Dennis Yu was talking about signals being more important than content. His approach is say you need to give signals to these machines, and then they will understand what's going on.
Yeah.
People are focusing on content, and in fact, maybe less focused on content and more on the signals that we're generating.
Yeah.
It would seem that you're on the same page.
Yeah, totally.
Brilliant. So now next question is MCP. Can you explain MCP briefly to me and then explain where we're going with this or where you feel we're going with this?
So the Model Context Protocol has created important competitive advantage for Anthropic. Anthropic introduced the Model Context Protocol to help models get in contact with external data. And that's the original design of the protocol. It has evolved. It has at least 3 significant waves of evolution. Right now, it is a key component of the infrastructure, meaning that if you have data or if you have an application, you can use MCP across the stacks. So whether you want to target Copilot, or you want to target Claude, or you want to target Gemini or ChatGPT, end of the day, you end up in working with MCP. And MCP manifests right now as an application inside an operating system. So you have Claude, and then through MCP you can interact with Linear, or you can interact with WordLift. One thing that I found out almost a year and a half ago when we started to use it at scale was that I could encapsulate an agent inside MCP as a tool for another agent. And so I was able to create a form of co-intelligence. So there is an orchestrator that can be ChatGPT or Claude that can call another agent via MCP. And it's a little bit, articulated, and it was, of course, consuming a significant amount of tokens within the interaction. However, it created an immediate opportunity for creating multi-agent system at scale. And so it is still a very important part of our product portfolio to encapsulate agents inside the MCP. But MCP has evolved because right now you can encapsulate web application inside an MCP. So you can add an agent, you can add a tool, you can add a simple connection to the data, but you can also start to add a front-end application. And the OpenAI widgets or apps are pretty much built on top of the MCP, not using the MCP web app standard of Anthropic, but I mean, the direction is clear. Now, this is one part.
Oh, okay. There's another part. Sorry, go ahead.
No, this is one part. Now, to make things a little bit more confusing, there is something more interesting, I think, that has happened in the last months, which is the introduction of WebMCP. That while the name seems similar, has a complete different scope. WebMCP is an initiative incubated inside W3C, so the Web Consortium, and sustained and backed up by Google and Microsoft, just like Schema was in the old days. Now, WebMCP has a different goal, which is to ensure that an agent, when gets on a web page, he doesn't need to go through the DOM, or he doesn't need to create a snapshot of the page and read the image and understand where to move the cursor of the mouse, but he can actually call the DOM functions directly in JavaScript. So this is creating an incredible assist for accessibility. of existing web pages. So you have a form, and as an agent, via WebMCP, I don't need to go through the page itself. I can call, the fields, and I can send back the data to the form via WebMCP. And we started to use this WebMCP, I think, 3 or 4 months ago, and I see traffic going up on the WebMCP as well. But it's a completely different use case than the MCP, because the MCP, for us, it's a way by which I can build your website inside Claude using the data that I have in the knowledge graph.
Right. And then WebMCP is another, a more reliable method for providing information in a structured manner for the bots.
Yeah, WebMCP solves the accessibility problem of an AI agent in regards to existing web pages. So it is designed to ensure that as an agent, I don't need to read through the HTML. I can find in JavaScript all the function I need to do things on that web page that the user would do using the mouse.
Brilliant. Okay. And so now the question is, should people be concerned if they're not already up and running with MCP and WebMCP?
I think if you have, for example, a form, like, we have our AI audit, audit.wordlift.io. And it allows you to assess exactly this problem of how AI accessible is my website or web page. And in the end, it's a form, right? Because you start with the URL and then you end up getting some results. So by adding WebMCP there, I am enabling a new community of users that are, agentic. And so if you have something that is contained enough where you think an agent would, benefit from getting access, then WebMCP is definitely a solution. However, again, it's still an ongoing process. The specs are changing. There is a very lively and interesting community around working on it. So I mean, it's kind of moving a lot now. On the other side, if you have now content or data encapsulated into web pages and you do not have your knowledge graph or knowledge base or wiki, or call it the way you want it, and it's not accessible by MCP, you are pretty much outside of the market. So yes, I mean, there are kind of two different use cases, but I think that everyone needs to start thinking in terms of what is my MCP strategy.
Brilliant. That's a really great way to end this particular session. Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you, everybody. Keep watching. Kalicube Summit 2026 is going to go on and on and on for 2 full days, at least 24 sessions, maybe more. We don't yet know. Thank you so much, Andrea.
Thank you.